Hello and welcome to Sit Down with the Chief. The Patrolmen's Benevolent Association is upset right now with both the mayor and the city council. Richard Steier looks at why. Richard?
Basically, you've got a situation where the PBA last week sent a delegation out to Iowa where the mayor was speaking to a group of progressives making the case for how things should be in this country. And a lot of people think that the reason he chose Iowa as the place to do that is because it holds the first votes for president in 2020 in the form of the Iowa caucuses. The PBA was making the argument there that he is not a friend of labor. There were other unions, including the TWU, who were taking out ads objecting to other mayoral policies. The TWU was describing the mayor as a phony progressive. The PBA has never been particularly interested in having a progressive running City Hall. Its main beef, and what they were referring to as him not being a friend of labor, is the stalemate in their contract talks, that they are in front of a mediator right now, which is widely believed to be just a preliminary step before they go into arbitration, which has been a common practice for the union under Pat Lynch and was when Michael Bloomberg was mayor, as well as the current occupant of City Hall. In terms of the city council, Pat Lynch was objecting to the City Council Right to Know Act, which was passed last week by the council and is expected to be signed into law by the mayor shortly. And basically that puts some restrictions on police officers and requires them to be more accountable to the public. One of the bills would require that they present business cards to those who they stop and give them a number at which they could call to make complaints if they were dissatisfied with how they were treated. Lynch was criticizing both major bills that are components of the Right to Know Act, but one of those bills actually was, some would say watered down, others would say was simply a compromise that was reached involving the mayor, the police department, and one would presume that at least the PBA's input was heard, even if it wasn't directly at the table. And one reason that we know this is because the sponsor of that particular bill, Richie Torres, was endorsed by the PBA for re-election. And you might say that that's just practical politics because he was going to win easily regardless of whether the union was on board. But I think that it's also a measure of the fact that he had taken some steps to make the bill less onerous from the PBA's point of view. One of the things that is not being included in terms of the kind of stops where they would have to give those cards out to citizens is traffic stops. And that was bitterly protested by some other council activists, including Jumani Williams and Donovan Richards, both of whom, not coincidentally, had been seeking the city council speaker's job, as had been Richie Torres. And so that if you've got reformers both within the council and people from the community who are objecting to that particular bill, and you've got the PBA endorsing its sponsor, you have to figure that on that one, at least of the two, that the outrage was a little bit exaggerated on Pat Lynch's part. But in any event, I think that you can expect to see the union keeping the pressure on the mayor if he continues going out of town to try and make the case that he's not as liberal, progressive, or labor-oriented as he would like to put himself forward as being, until you get some sort of settlement or arbitration award, whether it's to the PBA's satisfaction or not. And if it isn't, I would expect even after the contract is settled, the PBA will be going on the road with the mayor, not quite like Hope and Crosby, but there will be a certain amount of entertainment in the act.
Thank you, Richard Steier, and thank you for watching Sit Down with the Chief.